Hello, lovelies. Welcome to Horror 421, the podcast, with your host, your friendly small-town horror author, Charles Campbell. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the frights in this week's episode.
This episode of Horror 421, the podcast, is brought to you by Terror Tour. Music is a killer. Virginia Morgan is the lead singer of a band called the Valley Rats. They have embarked on a regional tour. There is excitement in the air, but there's also something else. One by one, members of the band receive ominous letters at each stop. At first, they think it is a harmless prank staged by a fan. Soon, they learn it is something much more sinister. The band will have to come together to play the show of their lives if there is any hope that they can survive the Terror Tour. Terror Tour can be found at valleyboypublications.com by clicking on the shop tab. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Horror 421, the podcast. I'm your host, small town horror author Charles Campbell, and today I have two very special guests that I'm super excited to talk about. One, he's a movie director, and he's written two solid films that I really enjoyed, The Barn and The Barn 2. And his name is Justin Seaman. And he has one of his actors with him today that was starred in The Barn 2. Her name is Alyss Winkler, and we're going to have a nice conversation today. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hello.
Hi. Hi. All right. Well, first off, we'll start off with The Barn just a little bit. Justin, a couple years ago, I was in Charlotte, and I picked up a copy of The Barn. I think it was at a Days of the Dead convention. And I was actually staying at a friend's house, and I went in, we popped it in and started watching it. And it blew me away, man. It actually took me all the way back to my childhood immediately because I was smiling. I had a grin from ear to ear as soon as the intro came up. And I was super excited to watch that movie, and I devoured it, and I loved every minute of it. So, Justin, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about how that movie came about, and we'll get into a discussion as we go along.
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you for the kind words. I'm glad you enjoyed the film. So a few years back, I got an opportunity to make this movie called The Barn. That was like a lifelong dream of mine to make, and it was based on a childhood story that I wrote when I was 8 years old. And since we were talking about just before, and I found it, I'll show you. I wrote the story in '93,
Wow.
back when I was just a little kid. But it was always a story that I always wanted to turn into a movie. So in 2013, I got the opportunity to finally make that. And that original story was very much a Goosebumps tale, because I was just a little kid when I wrote it, and Goosebumps was very heavily influenced at the time. But I wanted to turn it into like an 80s slasher film. So at the heart of that, of The Barn, you can feel the Goosebumps elements of the three monsters and all this stuff, the kids fighting monsters and stuff. But very much an 80s slasher. And to my surprise, there was almost like a cult fan base that found this film and propelled it, thanks to people like you, to the point that I did so many film fests and conventions that people were coming up to me asking if there was going to be a sequel. And it was the first movie was really hard to make, and I was kind of burnt out afterwards. And I kept telling people like, no, it was just, that's a one-off. I'll probably never, continue it because it was so hard to do. But it happened, so many times over and over that I was finally like, man, do people really want this to really exist? Another story. So I started telling people, I said, if I do an Indiegogo and you come forward and help support it, sure, I'll do it. So I did that. I launched an Indiegogo, and I think within like maybe 2 to 3 weeks of like that 30-day span that we were asking for the money, it got completely funded. So then I was like, oh, okay, now I have to make a sequel.
That's right. That's amazing, man. I'm going to hold up a copy of The Barn, and we'll get into where you can pick this up in a little bit. And we'll talk more about this movie for sure. But I want to segue into The Barn 2, and I want to bring Alyss in the conversation. How did you get involved with Justin? And I love your role in The Barn. You have one of the most amazing kill scenes that I've seen.
Thank you.
It was pretty good. I loved it. So tell us how you connected with Justin and got into the sequel?
So they actually reached out to me.
Okay.
And I was really excited about the opportunity. I had heard about the barn. Fun fact, my mom actually saw the barn before I ever saw it.
Oh, wow.
She's a huge fan. And so I immediately was excited, read the little bit of material I was given, and I was like, wait, I have to go do this. This is too much fun.
Oh, that scene was fucking awesome. And you can, if you want, you can talk about that scene a little bit. I don't want to spoil too much, but I love the way it was set up with what was it, Lap Dance Larry? Was that his name? Yeah.
Yeah. Lap Dance Larry, one of my favorite
Lap
characters
Dance
in the whole
Larry,
movie.
and I thought the oh geez, what was the pumpkin, Hallow Jack, right? Hallow Jack, is that right? Yeah, I thought he was staring a little too long at the lap dance there, Justin. But
he's enjoying the show.
But how was it filming that scene?
That scene was a lot of fun to do. Without giving too much detail away, that was probably one of the coolest special effects scenes that I have done in my filming career. Like all the makeup, the way they made me look at the very end of that scene was just really rad. Like I actually still have a bunch of selfies stored away on my phone because I love looking back and getting to see the amazing work they had done. Like the makeup itself is just so amazing and really cool.
Yeah, I loved it. That probably was my favorite kill scene in the movie, just so you know. For me.
It's a messy scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say, as far as scenes in the movie, it's probably the most fun. Like when you get to it to watch. I mean, energy wise, music wise, but it's definitely 100% a tribute to Evil Dead. You know, when you get to that, and but I will say I found out Alyss through Scott's and Brian's movies, and when I saw her in Space Babes, I was like, I want to work with her. She seems fun. She seems like she'd bring a lot of energy to a film set. So that's how she came on my radar as far as an actress, you know. But obviously, you've been in a lot of stuff. But that was the movie that did it for me. That I was like, I want to work with you.
The biggest known ones I've done.
Yeah, well, I went back and looked at your filmography, Alyss, and there's quite a few that I'm definitely going to check out. I haven't had time to sit there and watch them yet, but I'm going to definitely check them out. And I wrote a list down.
Yep. If you haven't watched Space Babes from Outer Space, watch it.
I've got it written down here. I'm definitely.
Oh, you've never seen it?
I've never seen that one.
I believe it's on Tubi right now, actually, for anybody that wants to see it. It's a lot of fun.
Well, I watch Tubi a lot because they're free, but
I fall down the rabbit hole of Tubi all the time.
Oh yeah, well, I have another one here, Slaughterhouse Slumber Party. So
that one was a lot of fun to do. It probably has definitely one of my favorite death scenes. It's not the messiest scene, but I'm a huge fan of I don't want to spoil it for you because you've never seen it.
I've never seen it, but don't spoil it.
Aquatic animal I really like, and they gave me a death scene involving it, and it was just like, yes, bucket list, check.
Now, when we're talking about the barn, maybe not the barn 2, but when we're talking about the barn, I will put this disclaimer out there to the listening audience. A lot of people have seen that movie, so if we have spoilers, we'll say spoiler alert before you talk about anything in that movie in detail. But the barn 2 is very recent, so I don't want to go too far into what's going on with the barn 2. But I want to go back to the barn for just a second. And Josh and Sam's ploy. How did you, and I know you wrote these as a child, the books, but where did you get the inspiration for Sam's rules for Halloween? Those were pretty cool. And I was checking them off as he was saying it.
Yeah, so I myself am obsessed with Halloween. So a lot of Sam is me. And I think, a lot of that's in the original storybook. So I think a lot of the rules are just things that I kind of lived by, like a moral code of Halloween myself. Just being so it was my night as a kid. Like I lived by Halloween. So those were things I thought like you should do. So I guess they would have been like Justin's rules.
Nice.
Awesome.
But I tell people like Sam was a mixture of me and some other friends, and so was Josh. Josh was a mixture of like my closest friends, like kind of how they acted and things that happened in their life with situational things. But those were how those characters were kind of made, so it was easy to like write them, because of I knew them, you know, especially Sam. He was pretty much me.
Well, that's cool to know, man, because I thought his rules were awesome, and then at the end, he was like, you know, I fucked up. We broke the.
yeah. And I find myself in that situation a lot in life. Yeah. It's, you know, you learn.
Yeah. Well, I want this is a question for both of you. I would love to know your influences in horror. Alyss, you obviously acted in quite a few indie horror films, and I love indie horror films. I'm gonna go back and check out as many of these as I can. But one at a time, what were some of your influences in horror coming up as a kid? What drew you to the horror genre? What makes you love horror?
I get this kind of question a lot, and a lot of it comes back to my mom. So my mom growing up was a huge horror movie fan, and she liked newer horror films, but she was definitely more like classic monsters and B horror. So we had stuff like Basket Case, Frankenhooker, stuff like that in our household. And when I was really little, that stuff terrified me. But as I got older and I started learning like the behind the scenes from my mom, because she's the kind of person who would point out, she's like, look at that wire there. You could see the cameraman shadow there. I love that stuff. And so for me, B horror and indie horror is just so like, I guess home roots.
Right.
It just makes me feel like I'm back home with my mom.
Oh, that's nice.
And so I love that kind of stuff, and it makes me pursue that.
Well, it's similar for me, and this podcast isn't about me, but growing up as a child, my stepmother really got me into it. She'd take us to the video store, and we just raid the horror movie section. And you know, I'm a little older than both of you guys, so but the first horror movie that really scared the shit out of me was the original Evil Dead. We rented it on VHS. And I was like 9 or 10 years old. We popped that thing in, and I loved it, and it scared the shit out of me at the same time. So that's the way it was for me. And Justin, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think same as Alyss, it was a parental thing. Mine was more so my parents were separated. So on the weekends I would go to my father's, and it was kind of like anything you want to see, I'll let you watch it. Right?
Man, just that is the same as me. I went to my dad's and my stepmom would take us to get these movies. But anyway, keep going.
Yeah, it was just like, just don't tell your mom what you're watching, right? So my mom was cool. Like, she would let me watch scary things, but like, because she knew, like, you know, my son, like, he's into scary movies. But like the extent of my mom was like, I don't know if you can see back there, like Monster Squad. Like, I love Monster Squad. I love like Little Monsters, you know, any like the 80s kind of scary stuff for kids. I still love that. But like with my dad, you know, he introduced me to the stuff kids shouldn't have watched at a young age. You know, like my mom's like, oh, I don't want you watching Freddy Krueger. I don't want you watching Jason or Michael, you know. So I was watching all that, but then I was watching other things, you know, like I Spit on Your Grave.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh wow.
Faces of Death. Because he basically was like, you can go pick out whatever you want. And I was picking out like whatever the coolest looking covers were, you know. And even at the time, he didn't even know what they were.
What
you know,
he was consuming, he was
just like, did you pick out what you wanted for the weekend? I'm like, yeah. And I'd go back and I'd be like, what did I want? You know, what have I picked out? Like, you know, but it was cool because I watched so many movies, you know, probably at like, I don't know, 8 or 9 years old, that, you know, my mom, when I would go through the movies section, I'd pick up the same movie and be like, Mom, can I get this? She'd be like, absolutely not. You're not getting that movie. And I'd be like, oh, I already watched it. You know?
Don't worry about it.
Tell her that. But I'm like, I've already seen it. But like it was cool because it was cool bonding, you know, with my dad on things, you know, trying to find like what was the scariest movie we could find. But also it turned into a love for me of filmmaking, because I rented a movie called it was The Making of a Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4. Okay. And it was the first time I ever saw like the behind the scenes of anything. That, and they did it was a VHS of The Making of Thriller. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, I had that VHS back in the day.
And I thought that was so cool because, you know, you watch the movie and then they showed you all the behind the scenes of how it was being made. And I love it.
Was amazing too.
Yeah. So that piqued my interest even more, because I always liked making short films and doing things with like the family camcorder. But then I finally got to see like Hollywood movies being made and how they were doing it. So that, that was more of a bonding thing that me and my dad had, where, not so much that I didn't have with my mom until like later on in life, when it started to be like, oh, this is what I'm going to start doing, as like a career, But yeah, I would say influence wise, that wasn't like directors and, writers and people like that later on in life, where I was like, I want to aspire to be these people. This is where it all started.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I've said this on a previous podcast, but since you guys are bringing it up, I'll tell you something a little funny about my upbringing. My stepmother would take us to get these movies. We get anything we want: Mausoleum, Evil Dead,
Yeah,
Mortuary, whatever.
yeah.
Pick it out. Now we could see someone's head getting chopped the fuck off. We could see somebody getting stabbed. We could see somebody getting their eyeballs plucked out. But if tits came on the screen, she held up a blackboard.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
That's funny.
Yeah, isn't that hilarious?
Yeah.
But
I didn't have that. My mom was showing me like, what did I say earlier? Frankenhooker, which is my favorite horror movie. Not a usual one for people, but she was a huge fan of that stuff. So the amount of nudity we see in that,
yeah.
I didn't get the hand over my eyes as a kid. Now my brothers probably did.
Yeah. Well, no, she had a blackboard. She had a little blackboard. Stick it up in front of the television, and she'd watch until the tits were gone, and she'd pull it back down. I'm like,
oh my goodness.
Wow.
Like, what the hell? Like in the Friday the 13th Part 2, when the girl goes to swim in the lake, she strips all the way down as soon as those clothes come off.
So she was like a live action censorship for you.
Yeah. We could hear any curse word or see any kill. That was fine.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Oh man. So let's get back into the Barn 2 a little bit. We're gonna jump around because we're talking about 2 movies primarily.
Sure.
So with the Barn 2, Alyss and Justin, what were some of your biggest challenges in filming that movie? What were some obstacles you maybe had to overcome, if you had any at all? Looked like you had a lot of fun, but I'm sure.
Yeah.
This was,
I will say, the biggest obstacle for me was no, go ahead. No, you go first.
You started. Go.
No, go first, because mine might be longer than yours. Go ahead.
Okay. I was gonna say probably the only like real challenge I had was this was the first real closed set I had ever been a part of, as well as signing the NDA that we all did to make sure that nobody could know anything about the film or have any of it spoiled. And we also got only like our little sections of the script,
right,
to make sure that not even the actors knew how the movie was going to end. And that was probably the hardest thing for me, because you're building this character and you want to make sure that you have created this persona, but at the same time, like, you don't even know the rest of the movie yet.
Yeah.
So it did create a little bit of a challenge. It's like, okay, well, how do I need to act? What do I need to know? Well, if someone asks me, what exactly do I have to make sure I have to say and what I can't say? And so that was probably like the most challenging thing for me, was because I love being able to share about a movie and tell everyone about it. But at the same time, I was like, I don't want to be that person that lets people know the secrets of the movie.
Exactly. Well, even with this podcast, I'm trying to be a little guarded with the sequel because it's still relatively new.
Yeah.
So I don't want to give away too many plot points, but the ending, guys, when you watch it, you'll be like, what the fuck? Yeah. But anyway, all right, Justin.
I was just going to say that, I mean, making the movie was a blast. I had way more fun with the sequel than I did the original. It was just like a big party, pretty much. I mean, it was work, but it was like a big party with everybody. The hardest part was shooting it during COVID, because I didn't expect COVID to happen. And actually, the scene with Alyss, the whole that weekend, we shot, I think, 3 separate scenes with all the sorority girls, and that was the first time back since we had paused for COVID. And that was like a 6-month break or something.
Oh man, that had to be a challenge to pick that back up after being away for so long.
It was, because we were to the point where we were like, if we wait any longer, this movie might just end and we might not come back to it. So it was nice to get back, but it was also very stressful in a sense, because of like, you don't know, you have that fear of, we all get back together, and then what if
Yeah.
one of us has COVID and we all get COVID, and then it becomes this massive thing of like
It was
everybody
scary.
everybody caught COVID because we got together to make a film, and then it becomes like this is why we shouldn't have got back together, and
Yeah.
thankfully
Oh, man.
thankfully it didn't. But I mean, outside of that, the struggle of just finishing the movie during the COVID period was it was hard because it took way longer than expected because we condensed, the scene, the time together with people to keep the room smaller and into longer weekends, and stretched it over. So it was definitely like a year and a half. It got released a year and a half later than it was supposed to due to that.
Yeah.
But I will tell you there was a benefit to that as well. Like I was able to get Joe Bob Briggs and Diana Prince involved, Doug Bradley involved.
Yep, I had that in my notes. That was the next thing I was going to. So keep going.
And that's all because of the delay that was produced by COVID. That's the only reason I got them involved was because their schedules all opened up. Because there was
because of the pandemic. Yeah.
Yeah, they weren't doing other films. I had already been in talks with them, and it was like they weren't sure if they would be able to do anything, but all of a sudden everybody's schedule opened up, and they were like, hey, if you want to do something, we can do it now. So it worked in my favor.
For sure, man. When I saw Pinhead sitting there giving that story to the girls, I thought that was pretty awesome.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite scenes for sure, dialogue wise.
Oh yeah. He nailed it too. I mean, I was going to ask you, how'd you get those guys? Those are some pretty big names that you got them in there. How'd you get Doug Bradley? What'd you have to tell him to pitch him to do the movie?
I approached him with the scene. I told him that it was a very important part that tied into the first movie. That if I couldn't get him, I was going to probably cut it from the sequel because I wanted him to do it.
Right.
And that was the truth. I told everybody we had shot that scene prior to the pandemic with the girls. So we shot it with the girls actually talking to Lap Dance Larry. He was sitting in the chair. But we didn't have the reversal shots, because we were just like, we needed to wrap those actresses. So I told everybody, I said, if we can't find Doug or we can't find at least some actor that's, of status that can pull this off, I'm cutting this scene, but I want to shoot it now. But in my mind, it was like, if I can't get Doug, I'm going to cut it either way. So when I approached Doug, I told him that. I said, we've already shot it. All you'd have to do is just come in and we would insert you with some stand-ins, and it would take, a half a day to do it, and just make you look good. And he lives in Pittsburgh. So him driving, you didn't know that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah. So it would only take him like an hour to drive to set. He'd be there a few hours. He could drive home.
Awesome.
So he got back to me really quick. We negotiated, a price. And then he sent me to his agent, which I was like, oh man, I was so close. Didn't think I had to go to the agent. So I went to the agent. The agent renegotiated the price so he could have his cut, which I figured that was going to happen.
Yeah.
But then it worked, and and Doug came, and I will tell you, out of all the people I worked with, Doug was the most intimidating. Just not that he was a bad guy or anything. Just
just what he came from,
carry
man.
An intimidating vibe to him. I've run into him in a restaurant before. He carries himself very well.
Wow, he's from the Hellraiser movies, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, he when he got to set, he asked questions about like what Walter had been doing that morning, and had what do you think he ate, and and this kind of, it was just stuff like, oh, okay, he's really
into it.
Thinking, thinking about
That's
this a
awesome.
lot. And, so he was really, really cool to work with, and I'm really glad. But he did tell me, he was like, you reached out at the perfect time, like to get him, because there was nothing going on. So I was like, okay, just it was meant to be, basically, for me.
Amazing how it worked that way. So like you said, the pandemic worked to your advantage, and worked to the advantage of another little indie movie that came out not too long ago with Terrifier 2. That killed me how well that thing did at the box office, and I was like, oh my god,
so good in theater.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I saw it in the theater as well. Well,
Worth it.
Alyss, I'm gonna go back to you with the barn too. I'm sure
Okay.
you have a story or two. What's the most do you have a story that you could share with the audience without really spoiling anything where you had an exceptional amount of fun, or was there something that you couldn't quite get your hand on when you were acting?
We'll go with the exceptional fun. There's a tidbit that actually got left in the movie, and it was really just me goofing off in the background. There's a scene with the pink nail file
Okay.
where I'm playing with that.
Yeah.
They were filming the other part of the room, and I'm sitting in my chair and I'm just balancing a nail file on my head,
Yeah.
throwing it down.
And they kept it
That
in.
was just something I was doing, and we decided to go ahead and film it.
Nice, Justin.
Yeah.
I have been known for some of the films off camera. I will amuse myself quietly. And that was just one of the things that got to be accepted into the scene. And it just cracks me up when I see it.
Oh,
No,
There's
man.
that, and then the
fun.
beer bottle when we're all doing the toast.
Yeah.
I put water in mine so it looked like it had something, and I'm swirling it to chug a whole bottle of water to make the scene look a little more real.
Oh man. Well,
I
this
was
is
kind of frat boying my character a little
Rat
bit.
Boy. Yeah. Well, you're having fun. I could tell. And I enjoyed your performance. I thought it was really good.
Thank you.
So something else that's really good in both films, and you both of you guys can chime in on it. Justin may have a little bit more to say about it, but the special effects team that you guys have and the practical effects that were done in both movies. I love practical effects, and I love the practical effects of both of these movies. Can you talk about that a little bit and what went into putting those together?
Yeah. So in the first movie, I think we had like 30 kills. In the second one, we did about 60. And it varies. We had different teams in both, but Zane and I both did special effects in both films. And in the second one, specifically because of the pandemic, we had to do a lot of the special effects ourselves. And then the guy who played Lapdance Larry, Max,
Right.
he helped out a lot too, because it became like a smaller group of us on set more and more. So he helped out a lot towards the end when we were kind of just focusing more and more on special effects. So towards the end, it became a lot of me, Zane, Ryan, who was doing a bulk of the special effects, and Max. But we were just having a blast with the special effects stuff. It got to a point where we were like, what else can we do that would be fun to kill somebody, and just kind of sitting around going like, we could probably, slit this girl's back open,
That looked
that was
amazing.
Oh, yeah.
And then one of the very last ones we did was after we put the movie together and we were watching it, we basically were looking at everything that was done, and there was a girl that gets killed in the hallway by a bird creature.
Yeah.
And she didn't get killed all that great. And we were like, man, her death's not as cool as everybody else's. Like we should go back and like amp that up a bit. So then we went back and we made a head that splits in half and everything, and we went back and we reshot that, and that ends up being a lot of people's favorite kill because it just goes.
I think it's almost officially the favorite.
Yeah,
it's almost officially the favorite from a lot of the fans I've heard from that have seen it.
Yeah.
That's like one of the top kills.
Yeah, from a kill perspective, I probably think that probably is 1 or 2 for me, but I still loved Alyss's scene. Just because of the way it was set up and how, I don't want to spoil it for the people that need to watch it. And you guys watch it, go watch it. But anyway. Well, what about you, Alyss? Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just good. No, but it was fun just having like the freedom to do so many different things because of the pandemic gave us time, and we did it like all on our sound stage. We could go back and like fix things, and like that was the very last effect we did in the movie was that head.
That was a cool scene.
But it was just fun. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, Alyss, do you have anything you want to add to the special effects side of things? When you had yours done?
I loved getting to do it. I got to see a couple other of them because, as Justin said earlier, he filmed a couple scenes like all in the same studio on the same day.
Hmm.
So a couple of the other actors that walked by, I got to see the makeup that was done on them, and it was really cool. This was definitely one of the bigger productions I had gotten to be a part of with special effects. And like our scene in particular, the amount of mess that wasn't actually mess, like the prosthetic they use, it's made to look super messy, but like you could walk around still wearing it.
Oh, nice. So it's
I
like
really
having
liked how it looked.
like having your hair look like it's wet, but it's not.
Yeah, well, my hair was wet. I will say that my hair was wet.
Oh man.
But the
Well,
stuff they had built for my face, though, it was really cool how they had done it because it wasn't just like one solid piece; it was just layers over and over,
yeah.
and it ended up looking really amazing at the end.
Well, I have a very good friend. She's a special effects makeup artist. I'm amazed at the things she can do, and that always amazes me. I don't have the talent for that, but seeing it, it's true art. And
It really is.
yeah, the guys and girls who do that and put that together, they are amazing artists for sure, with the stuff they can pull off. So, kudos to your staff there, Justin. They did a great job.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
one other little fact I want to throw out there for the listening audience: Justin is not only a director in the films, he also plays a certain character. You want to talk about the character you play, Justin?
Yeah, so I play the boogeyman. He's the miner in the film. I've played him in both movies so far. So yeah, it's been fun. It's been a challenge, but also rewarding, because I get to kill my cast as well. So
And well, for the listening audience, let's dive into those characters a little bit more. So we won't really spoil anything because we'll kind of
yeah.
go back to the original Barn movie. But can you kind of fill in our listening audience a little bit about the where or the backgrounds of these characters, the Boogeyman, Candy Corn Scarecrow, and what was the other guy's name?
Hello, Jack.
Yeah, Hallow Jack. I keep forgetting
Yeah,
Hallow Jack.
so
He's but anyway.
so the boogeyman is the miner. He is the guardian of the barn. He protects it. There is Hallow Jack. He's a pumpkin man that takes care of the pumpkin patch. And then there's the candy corn scarecrow that protects the harvest and his corn. So they're a buddy trio of the barn buddies. That's been the roots of the story, that you knock on the barn doors and these guys come out and they collect your flesh for the devil. And then they get to come back for the sequel, and they bring a couple extra friends with them. That's a pig man and a crow man, and they do some damage too. But no, I was fortunate that I got to play the lead monster, because the original actor in the first movie backed out the week of, and that was supposed to play the boogeyman, and I just was like, well, I'll just do it because I'm going to be there. So I know I will show up.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I know I will show up every day, and that became really hard. But then in the sequel, I was just like, I'll do it again because I'm not going to have this issue where I know I'm going to be there. And it became easier, but it was also still kind of a pain in the butt. But it is nice. Is one of those things, is like meeting people at conventions and film fests, because they're like, oh yeah, you're the boogeyman. I'm like, yeah, that's me. So I can sign stuff as the boogeyman. So it's a nice little thing to do.
Yeah, he sure can, because he signed my DVD as the Boogeyman.
Yeah,
so
there you go. Yeah.
And also the for the barn too. So he definitely signed it. So nice. I appreciate that. That was nice. That was nice.
Yeah.
Oh,
but it's fun because I hate to I'm not going to give any spoilers, but I get to rough up people in the second one that I got to rough up in the first movie too. So it was fun getting to do it again, years later.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It was awesome. Can you talk a little bit about the Josh and Sam dynamic in both films? Well, I don't want to give away too much in the second film, especially the first film, the Josh and Sam dynamic, because they kind of acted, they weren't brothers, but they felt like they could be brothers. Kind of give a little background for the listening audience on those two characters.
Yeah, so Sam and Josh definitely are best friends. And yeah, like you said, they could basically be brothers. And as best friends and brothers would do, they could butt heads a little bit, and you would do that when you're so close to somebody. But the first story, especially if you've watched the extended cut DVD, which was a little bit longer than the Blu-ray release, it's very much more of a coming of age story, I would say, where you take these two characters on this trajectory of, one kid does not want to grow up, and the other kid is kind of in a situation of where he's trying to figure out who he is, considering that his father had passed. By the time you get to the end of the movie, both of those characters are put in this. They find themselves in the situation of where everybody else wanted them to be, and they kind of are in that situation, realizing, well, this is where we should be. Of Sam being like, yeah, I think it's time for me to grow up. I don't really give a shit about Halloween anymore. And Josh being like, you know what? Yeah, I think maybe I will start going to church on Sundays again, and being like my dad. But it was cool because they needed each other, and you have the ups and downs and everything. But it was, like I said earlier, it was more like there was a lot of me and my friends, in that character, in the characters together. It's hard to go into part two without giving it away. But I will say there was things that happened due to the pandemic that changed the outcome of part two, the way I would have liked to have made it and filmed it.
Yeah.
Because of the ability to get people here because of the pandemic, So, but just a little bit, not too much, but it did change some things, but it is what it is.
Well, I loved the ending of part two, and I'm not going to spoil the ending of part two, but you probably got this question. There's going to be a part three.
We are working on a part three right now.
Awesome.
I plan to crowdfund it. It'll be the same situation as part two. If the people fund it, it'll happen. If they don't fund it, it won't happen.
Yeah,
it would be easy as that. I don't want to get too set on it, but we've been working on a treatment for a couple weeks, and I'm excited for it. I think it'd be a great conclusion, what we've got. I think it wraps up a lot of what was unanswered in part one and part two, and gives a really fun ending to the trilogy.
Well, so that will be amazing. I'll definitely throw my support out there for sure.
That'd be awesome.
That's right. Yeah. Well, Alyss, I want to jump back to you, and we've been talking about the barn 2 a little bit, but I want you to tell the listening audience, because I'm definitely going to go back and look at your other stuff, because I discovered you through the barn 2, and I reached out to you to see if you'd be on this podcast, and you agreed. So I appreciate that. So I want to give you the floor for a few minutes to tell people what else you have done and what other movies they can find you in.
Well, like you had said earlier, Space Face from Outer Space is definitely one of my better known ones. I'm also in a film called Plank Face. I'm thinking, you see, I'm trying to think now off the top of my head, like different films I've done. I've been doing this for, almost 10 years now.
Wow.
That's about how long I've been in indie horror. Like some of it was under
I jotted some of them down. Blacktop Massacre, is that one?
Blacktop Massacre, I did like a tiny little scene over like a webcam for that one.
Okay.
I actually have some new stuff that I'm currently doing. I just recently got to work with Trauma for the first time.
Oh, wow.
And I had to promise them. So if Ben is listening to this, I lived up to my promise for Curse of the Weredeer.
Awesome. When is that coming out? Or is it out?
So they're actually finishing that one. I've gotten to see some of it already. It's a lot of fun. It's, of course, since it's a trauma film, it's really, really messy.
Oh, yeah.
I'm very excited for people to get to see it. I got to have a lot of fun with my character. I actually just recently was up in New York filming at Lloyd Kaufman's house for another film called The Killing Game. Wow. So if I believe if Bob East is watching this, he'll made sure to mention his film for him. Well, but a lot of my work you can find on my IMDb. Definitely one of the films I'm really proud of that doesn't get talked enough about is called Violet.
I have that written down here. Okay.
That one I'm very, very proud of. That was one of my first big lead films. And for me, it's a very hard film, especially because it's very realistic. It's about a young woman wanting to get into indie horror and she goes to an audition she saw online, and unfortunately it's not a real audition. It's what some women in the indie community actually fear. It's just some guys in a basement.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's that kind of level of horror. It's not quite I Spit on Your Grave because it's not as visual, but it's enough to really tear at you. And I was really proud of that role. So that's a film I definitely like people to see.
I'll definitely check it out for sure. And some of these films you said to me earlier, you can find some of them on Tubi. And are there other platforms they can find them or buy DVDs or anything?
I think Amazon Prime has a couple of them. A few of them are on Tubi. Most of them, like most indie films, you can actually reach out to the director and they will have a copy available. I know with Space Babes and Plankface and The Bad Man, which is another film I'm a part of, ScottShermer.com, I believe they are getting rid of everything.
Okay.
So what they have left is all they have left. So if you've always wanted a copy, now is the time to hurry and do it.
Awesome. Well, I'm definitely going to check out your stuff. I'm a fan now. I loved you in The Barn too, and I thought you did an amazing job. And
Thank you.
like I said, your scene stuck out to me. It's probably my favorite kill scene. So it was awesome. All right. Well, Justin, I'm going to jump back to you because I want to talk about a couple things outside of The Barn.
Sure.
I also have the DVD 1031. And I do believe you did a story in here called Old Hag.
Yes.
That was you. That was my favorite of
cool.
the anthology. It was definitely hands down my favorite story.
Thank you.
So you guys who haven't seen 1031, make sure you check it out. Overall it is a good anthology, but my favorite was Justin's. And without spoiling the story too much of Old Hag, I'd like for you to talk about that a little bit because I loved it. I thought it was great. It was amazing.
Yeah. So the story of Old Hag is about two videographers that are trying to get a job real quick, and they happen to go into a kind of failing bed and breakfast and pitch a job to the woman. It happens to be Halloween night, and to their surprise, she accepts their pitch, but she wants them to shoot it tonight.
Yeah.
On Halloween. And they're a little surprised by that, but they're like, okay, if she's willing to pay for it, so let's do it. And that's kind of the setup for the story. So some weird stuff starts happening. And one of the videographers starts seeing a woman through the house. My whole backstory for that was during shooting The Barn, I was exhausted on the original shoot because we were doing like 15, 16-hour days. I was getting home, maybe getting 4 hours of sleep and then getting back up and then getting back to set and,
right.
Doing all just because there was so little crew, and then I was doing so much extra like on my own with my wife, that I got to a point where I started kind of experiencing sleep paralysis. And I remember I woke up in the middle of the night and there was a woman in the room and she climbed on my chest. And it was so freaky. And it happened a few nights. And I told my wife about it. I said, I don't know if I'm dreaming this or what, but I looked it up. Like I looked it up online, and it was called like Old Hag syndrome. And it was scary as fuck. But I told her, I said, I want to do something about this, So then that led to the story for 1031 when I got an opportunity for it, which obviously I changed a lot of it, to make it into a short. But that's where it came from. It never happened again, but it was only when I was filming The Barn because I was just so exhausted.
Oh God, I love that story so much, man.
Yeah, it was a hoot. And the guy, the actor that plays the Old Hag in that is actually the same actor that plays the candy corn scarecrow in the Barn films.
Nice.
Yeah, he's just a really tall, skinny guy.
Yeah. Well,
so he worked perfect. He worked perfect for that makeup.
Well, he scared the crap out of me, man. I mean, I definitely wouldn't want to see that in my dreams or bed or anything. Hell no. And I want to bring up now 1031 Part 2. I don't think you had anything in that, did you? Or did you?
No. I just did some editing.
Gotcha.
Well, nothing to do with part 3.
What about Part 3? Did you have a story in here?
No, nothing.
Okay, that's all right.
I might do something. I might do something with part 4. I was so busy with the Barn 2, I missed out on part 3.
Well, I
and
didn't
now
read.
we're
Yeah, I didn't read it far enough in my notes. So I just thought I'd just ask you right here. You did sign it for me, so I appreciate that.
Oh wait. Oh, sorry. Part 3. Yeah. So on part 3, there's the trying to think. It's a faux trailer.
Oh, okay. Part of what you were one of the trailers. I got you. Yeah, I'm looking at the back.
I can't remember which one it was.
We have the Slaughter. We have Night of the Halloweenies, Radio Tower Road, Candy Killer, and A Stranger's Treat.
It was a hold on one second. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good.
It was the Hack in the Box.
Hack in the Box.
Yeah.
Oh man, cool.
That was the one I worked on with Zane. But we've been so busy doing the Barn 2, and then we just wrapped up Cryptids. Did I talk to you about Cryptids before?
Yeah, I don't think you have, so we can talk about that.
So Cryptids was it's actually the reason why Joe Bob was out and how he got involved in the Barn part 2. We shot that during the pandemic as well. So we built pretty much in the same space that Alyss was in. We built a radio station, and they're trying to figure out how to say this. So we had talked to Joe Bob maybe a year and a half prior to filming with him.
Mm-hmm.
And he was interested, but it was right before the Shutter show blew up. So they were like, well, yeah, we'll get back to you. And then the Shutter show blew up, and nobody, they basically were like, we don't know when he'll be available. So I said, okay, that's fine. But we definitely want him still to be involved. So what happened was he ended up reaching out to us right in the middle of the pandemic. His people did. And they said, hey, John wants to know if you still would like to shoot this. And we were like, we would love to, but we don't have a crew because there's a pandemic. And they were like, well, he said he's free right now, and we're like, okay. So we didn't have a place to shoot it because the radio station we were going to shoot it in wouldn't allow people in anymore. So we built this radio station in the sound stage down here. But then part of the agreement I talked to John about was I said, look, if we get you out here, if we were to shoot all these scenes quick enough, is it possible that if there's a little bit of extra time left, you could walk from the Cryptid set over to the Barn 2 set and then be in that movie as well? He was like, oh yeah, absolutely. So that's what we did. We made sure that on day 2, on day 2, we wrapped about 2 hours early, and then we went over and shot Barn 2.
2 birds, man. I got it.
Yeah. So that's how we worked that deal out. But Cryptids is just now finished, and we're going to start touring that movie this summer. But that's why I wasn't able to be as heavily involved in 1031 Part 2 and Part 3 as much as I would have liked
to. I get it, man. You're super busy, and
instead of just helping out.
The Barn 2 was amazing. It's definitely, the Barn movies are now on my Halloween rotation for sure. I've got an anxious beagle down here looking at me.
But I will tell you, there is a part 1031 Part 4 coming out, and potentially a Part 5 coming out as well. Yeah, I don't know if I'll have any involvement in those right now, but I just know that we're working on. Yeah. Well, I put them out. I just don't know if I'll be doing anything.
Well, I enjoy the Queen of Screams host too. Ow. My dog just bit me. Yeah. My dog just bit me. Stop, dude.
Oh
no. He wants to play. Okay, Alyss,
my cat walked over here and almost knocked stuff off the laptop.
Yeah, I'm going to jump back to you. We'll kind of start closing out the podcast a little bit, but I want people to know where they can find you. Anything else you want to promote before we go off the air? So I'm going to give you the floor for the next couple minutes and just tell everyone what you need to tell them about where they can find you and what do you have coming out.
So I had already mentioned some of the films that I have coming out. So they're almost done with Curse of the Werewolf, which I'm really excited for everyone to see. This is definitely one of my proudest moments. I got to do some stuff in the film that might shock some people, but everyone who actually knows me will go, "No, that tracks."
Now I
Um,
gotta see it. Now I gotta see it.
I had a very fun time in
All right.
the scenes that I'm in.
Okay.
So
I'll definitely go
they're
check it
very
out.
comical. Um, let's see, going down the line, another two films that recently just came out is The Grim Findings of Claudius. That one is currently available. I've been helping promote it on my Instagram and my Facebook. I also, through them, have done Experiment 53 and Rise of Experiment 53. We actually just released the sequel to that one. And if everyone really likes it, there might be some potential for a third.
Oh, nice.
But with what happened in the second one that just came out, it'll be interesting to see what we end up doing.
Okay. You have me intrigued, so I have some films to watch.
That one was a lot of fun. We actually did film that in a real haunted sanitarium here in Indiana. I don't mess with ghosts. I don't ghost hunt. I don't any of that. That place was scary.
Oh man, I'd love to visit
We
the
had
haunted
some
sanitarium.
real trippy stuff happen in that place while we were filming. But those are definitely some films that I would like people to check out. You can find out about it through, like I said, my Facebook, my Instagram. I have a Twitter, but I don't really use it.
Same here.
Know how to use it.
I don't keep up with Twitter. I use Instagram mostly.
But those are my social medias. People can follow me, and then through them, they can follow like the other stuff that I do, like the TikTok and the like boudoir and the photography.
And Alyss, if there are any links you want me to put in the podcast links below, I'll definitely do that for you. Just shoot them over to me and I'll put them down there. If you have any links you want me to promote.
I might actually send you our burlesque page. I am a board member in a burlesque troupe that is branching out and encouraging people to come perform with us. And we like all kinds of performers as well as horror burlesque performers. We're trying to get some more to come visit us.
Awesome. Well, send me the link and I'll definitely put it in the notes so people can click on it. All right, Justin, you're up to bat. Tell everyone where they can find your stuff, where they can buy these awesome DVDs. If they're media people like me, I like to get physical media. I stream too, but this is my preferred method. Yeah.
So if you want to support indie horror, the best option is to buy it directly. And that would be, especially for me, to go to screamteamreleasing.com. Any of the Barn films or the 1031s, they're all there. But all the upcoming projects will be there as well. So, you can get them from different sites, Walmart and Amazon and all that, but they all take a cut. So if you want to support us directly and make sure that we get 100% of that, go to screamteamreleasing.com.
And I will say
you can follow
us
on. You can find us at conventions too. We go to a lot. If you go to screamteamreleasing.com, we have a convention schedule. We're just now taking a little break, but it'll pick back up throughout the summer. But you could follow us on Instagram on Scream Team Releasing, and Facebook Scream Team Releasing. And you can also follow the Barn on Facebook. That's usually where we're the most active, me, at the Barn Movie, facebook.com/the Barn Movie. You'll find updates there, especially if we announce anything moving forward with the Barn Part 3.
Awesome. Well, I'll put links to all of those.
That's pretty much it for me.
I'll put links to all of those sites in the notes below. So that'll do it for this week's edition of Horror 421, the podcast. I am your host, the small town author, Charles Campbell. You can find me at charlescampbellauthor.com or valleyboypublications.com. They both take you to the same place. You can follow me on Instagram under Charles Campbell Author. We also have a Horror 421, the podcast Facebook page, so you can go check us out there. And I want to thank Justin and Alyss once more for joining us. We really appreciate it, or I really appreciate it for sure, and the listeners will. I'm so glad you guys could come on together because of the work you did together. So thank you. I just want to say thank you one more time.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Great. You guys have a great week. Our listeners have a great week, and we'll catch you next time on Horror 421, the podcast.
We hope you had a horrific time, lovelies. Thank you for tuning in to Horror 421, the podcast. Be sure to like us on YouTube and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.